Before we begin, I have another disclaimer to add. Initially, production for this video started in early 2021 and was meant to come out that same year. Thing is, I'm the editor here, and as you can probably tell, I take forever. Now, I wouldn't usually bother pointing this out. At most, I'd repeat how we don't endorse harassment, especially when the video being covered is nigh on 3 years old. But it's because so much time has passed that a different problem rears its head. For those who don't know, very serious accusations have been brought to light regarding Glitch Tales creator Camila Cuevas, primarily revolving around the people she has associated with and defended. All that became news to us around autumn of 2022. I say this because not only is this a heavy situation to discuss, but our commentary has nothing to do with it. We're talking solely about Glitch Tale as a series and not Camila as a person, and because Camila has been a hot button topic for the time being, we want to make that distinction clear. If you insist on learning more about what happened, I recommend these videos from Crystal Flame and Hopeless Peaches if you haven't seen them. Our video was made for harmless fun and we intend to keep it that way, but we still want to spread awareness. Okay, enough stalling. Without further ado, your feature presentation.
And then he demolished her, and I mean leaving absolutely nothing left. And that's how Gaster is the most powerful character in the Glitch Tale universe.
I see. Actually, I'll be honest, I think I got lost ages ago.
Sorry about that. I didn't get overly focused on stuff like that. Guess I have to start from the very beginning again. You see, one day an animator... Did you hear something?
Yeah?
Come on, you gotta be hiding in here somewhere.
Zenny, are you still trying to find Oreos in the fridge of all places?
Huh? First of all, I've been looking for Thin Mints. Who puts Oreos in a fridge?
Who puts Thin Mints in a fridge?
People with taste. Secondly, someone stole my cookies and left this in their place. Is this some kind of prank?
This is that Glitch Tale stuff you were going on a 100-page thesis paper about.
Zenny, Azzy, you guys have Undertale avatars?
Am I having a bad time?
Good, and I've already got my own. With that done, Azzy, how about you?
I could make up a folder. I think.
Here, this should make your life easier. I'm sure you'll get that done before the intro card ends.
Thanks! That fucking hurt!
You're very welcome. Now with that settled, let's get this ball rolling. Hey Azzy, you finished Glitch Tale and have your avatar folder ready?
I may have rewatched Kara vs. Astro 100 times now. I think I might have a new hyperfixation bolt.
I have done God's work. Now anyways, on to the context. Azzy, your call.
In September of 2020, a channel named Treeweed made a review of Glitch Tale, an animated series of fanfiction created by Camila Cuevas. I hope I pronounced that correctly, if not I apologize. That's based on the game Undertale.
Also, there's gonna be heavy spoilers for both Glitch Tale and Undertale, so if you still want to experience either for yourself, best do that before watching beyond this point.
The game is $10, and Glitch Tale currently has 5 or 6 hours of content, give or take. So that's something you can binge.
If you're still here despite the warnings then...
Do I even need to say let's burn through this at this point?
What the fuck? Glitch Tale is an alternate universe of Undertale made by Camila Crinkle, and it's a thing that I have a lot of problems with. Before I really rant about the series, I just want to say that overall I do like it. I think it's really well made, the plot is interesting, and I think the characters are pretty good. But I still have a lot of issues with it, and it's hard to say all of it in a short time. So let's go step by step and see why I like this series, why I don't like it, and everything in between. So let's start with the part that I like the most to the part that I like the least. So, let's go.
Guys, this video's stuck in a box! Won't someone free it? It is stuck in a box!
I know this is super soon to start talking about the editing, but the aspect ratio for the clips is genuine garbage, which is confusing since the video itself is in 720p, and there are effects that take up the whole screen. So why render it in this way? And I don't think this is even on purpose, as Cammy's watermark is under the original video, meaning this was probably recorded off of something like a phone. And in that case, why not just download the episodes? It'd probably take up less space, and even if you couldn't do that, there are many ways to edit the clip to take up the whole screen, in basically any editor with more processing power than Windows Movie Maker.
We forgot to mention that Treeweed's audio peaks like a lot. This gets pretty irritating for the ears, and I can't do much to mitigate the peaking besides lowering the volume by a few decibels. If you don't want your audio turned into sandpaper, I would advise adjusting the sensitivity on your microphone or to speak at least a few inches further away from it. And no, I am not going back to my recording booth just for a post point. My resolve may stand strong, but my integrities are freaking broken by the hour, I swear to Krispy Kreme.
The story was the most contentious part for me of the series, as it was hard to say if I liked it or didn't. Also with which season story would I like more, Season 1 or Season 2. But to put it very, very briefly, the story is glitches appear after a reset, Kara comes back, Gaster appears too, Kara hurts a lot of people, Flowey turns into Azrael and Kara dies, monsters go to the surface, Frisk meets Betty, the DMC and Jessica don't like monsters.
The DMC. The DMC.
Oh, I guess this glitch tale does feature Dante from the Devil May Cry series.
God dang it, Zenny.
And Knuckles.
Oh no!
Betty was actually evil. He kills Sans. Gaster tries to kill her and fails. Alphys dies. Betty runs away. Frisk up his LV. Azrael talks to Flowey, gets killed by Betty while fighting with Frisk. Sans comes back, filled with hate. Frisk starts the glitch and gets replaced by Kara. Betty becomes one with Akumu. Kara dies and comes back. Undyne meets Ronan. A lot of people fight Betty. Jessica dies. Sans comes back. Kara, Asgore, and Toriel fight Betty. Asgore got badly wounded. Undyne kills a big pink monster thing. Sans dies again, and Betty died too, but that just made it worse. Okay, now we're done. I know I skipped a lot, but 1, I don't want to spoil too much, and 2, I don't want to make an hour-long video. Not now, anyway.
Wow, this context is hot garbage. Given that to start, you barely explain crap, namely how the glitches started with Frisk saving Sans from Kara, or the fact that you explained almost nothing about Undyne, despite her being really important. Then there's the fact that some things are out of order, namely that Gaster appeared in Yet Darker before Kara even entered the timeline, or the fact that Kumu and Betty merged before Frisk got replaced. And your excuses for skimming over this are really poor. As for the latter, you can give a good summary in way less than an hour, and for the former, you literally give spoilers for both seasons, including but not limited to Kara dying in the finale to Season 1, Sans' death, Alfie's death, Flowey and Azrael's conversation, Azrael's death, by the way, good job not even mentioning Azrael being brought back like Sans, Frisk getting replaced, Asgore getting injured, and on that topic, most of the important stuff in Episode 8, including Sans' second death, and the main villain's death. So if you didn't want to give spoilers, good job on spoiling darn near half of the series while giving a really half-arsed recap.
And this is a weird case where you're also giving off too little info, as you don't really explain certain details like Alphys dying to Undyne or Frisk getting love who distance themselves from their friends and loved ones, while spoiling the fact that the main bad guy of Season 2 dies. I don't know how you managed to give out too little info and too much info at the same time, but you did it. Congrats?
You know what? Guys, time me. After Frisk overuses their power to reset the timeline and replaying the events that occur in Undertale, glitches start to form that allow a mysterious scientist and megalomaniac to free themselves from this void? It's hard to explain. Among these, the biggest foe the cast have to face yet comes after Frisk destroys their reset button, unleashing a cunning monstrosity hell-bent on killing everyone and chowing down on their souls. And done.
Less than 30 seconds.
Impressive.
Not even half the time Tree spent, and I didn't have to divulge any spoilers outside of the plot synopsis. And I'm sure there's a bunch more that I could have gone into, but Tree actually goes into more detail about everything else in this review after their elevator pitch, which is for the people who don't know the plot so far. Tree's retelling of Glitch Tale's cliff notes would actually give newcomers more questions than answers because there's an overabundance of details that aren't clearly explained.
Also, I like how throughout this bit there is some footage missing and they say #blame the editor. But they are the editor of this section, and by extension, every other section after this. I don't really have much to add to that. I just found that to be very funny.
But anyway, I like the story. I like that it deviates from the original story of Undertale, especially in
Season 2.
And it doesn't really change or ruin any character's personality or characteristics along the way. But the biggest problem with how the story progresses is that there are way too many close calls. This is usually called a Deus Ex Machina.
Deus! Deus! Oh, retakes were not done and it shows in moments like these. Like, I get if you think you shouldn't have to retake for a word like confusing seasons 1 and 2, but I think we wouldn't mind a retake for the mispronunciation of a trope they have issues with.
That's not even what a... Bolt, what are you doing? Bolt, what the...
Which, for an example, imagine a super cool fight scene with the villain about to kill someone, but then the hero stops the attack at the last moment. Now that is what we call a Deus Ex Machina in the business. And sometimes these can work really well for subverting expectations or creating tension, but they only really work in small doses, and if you look for them in Glitch Tale, they are everywhere.
Okay, first of all, nice cutoff at the end, making it sound near incomprehensible, but that's the least of our issues here. The way you describe Deus Ex Machina, while not the worst description I've ever heard in my life, still isn't good as it's way too basic in general. The definition of the term is an unexpected power or event saving a seemingly hopeless situation, especially as contrived plot device in a play or novel. And with that knowledge, let's look at these moments and see if they fall under this. First, saving Sans and Megalomaniac. While unexpected to the characters, as it was a glitch, it was still set up and made sense in the context of the story. Yet Darker admittedly is a bit closer to that trope, but the power to absorb souls was already established in the previous episode, and the "but it refused" power was something set up in Undertale with the Azrael fight. The one in episode 4 is the one that matches the definition most, since the ability was never established, but even then, one could argue this was meant to introduce the concept of individual soul magic, as this ability is later used in My Sunshine, and later evolves into the Sword and Shield we see later. In Season 2, Episode 3, they did show that Alphys and Jessica left the lab to save him with an earlier shot. In Season 2, Episode 4, Azrael was actively looking for Frisk, explaining how they showed up to save him. They set up Gaster leaving for the arena, explaining how Toriel was saved in Animosity. Undyne the Undying was established in Undertale, and they did explain how she was able to have an easier grasp keeping that form up thanks to their time spent on the surface, which also explains how the characters bleed. And honestly, I could go on. I think the big problem here is you have trouble deciphering between close calls and Deus Ex Machina. Deus Ex Machina would be something amongst the line of Frisk saving Flowey in episode 4, while Azrael saving Frisk would be an example of a close call. For a lot of the Deus Ex Machina moments, there are good context clues given as to how they were saved. So combined with the way you explain what a Deus Ex Machina is, your first major point comes across as moot, especially if you've seen a majority of these scenes.
Well, someone's filled with determination.
Bolt, you just made a bibble.
Well, slap me on the shoulder and call me King James.
Anyway, even if we went by your description of Deus Ex Machina, that kind of issue is more subjective. And while that's a fair look at these dramatic turning points, that's sort of ignoring how these turning points further the story. By your own description, all the characters are just doing what they are able to do to turn the tides. And there haven't been any plot holes or points in the story where a character shouldn't or can't do something. Pulling out these Deus Ex Machinas would give little reason for other characters to pitch into the battle, use other powers, or just go all out.
Story is how the story progresses can make the tone feel really weird. Like, it's hard to take, say, this scene with Undyne and Running talking, when tons of people could be dying seriously because they're talking when tons of people could be dying.
Okay, so let's tackle this point, because there's quite a bit to cover. The first of which is that you don't really show any context for this scene, so it's really hard to grasp what you exactly mean by that. Thankfully, we did watch the scene, and oh, looky here! We actually have context and found the scene is in Season 2, Episode 6, Part 1. The scene starts with them actually doing their job, and Rowan only started speaking with Undyne because he thought she was a civilian, which also shows how the police don't really have many monsters in their ranks for world building purposes, and only then do they start talking for a bit before Ronan is called about Ray. This was a simple introduction to add a bit of levity before going on into Ray's introduction. Even with the way it's paced, it flows pretty smoothly.
And then there's the ultimate flaw in this single example you give us. You're wrong. At this point in the story, everyone is making their way to the shelter while the AMD fend off the soul-snatching blobs that were terrorizing the town. There are even distant gunshots in the background of the scene, so the area Undyne and Ronan are in isn't heavily under siege. No one was dying at that moment, and the fact these two can have a brief conversation in the midst of it all still fits.
Now, theoretically, hypothetically, in an alternate timeline, you could be referring to the other conversation where Undyne is talking with a wounded Rowan, but not only would this have meant you have shown the wrong scene, but you would have also ignored that during that particular moment there were other people in the background trying to control the situation as they were talking. Either case, these particular situations aren't good examples of what you were referring to.
Stuff like that happens a lot, and not only does it dampen the tone, but it also makes it feel more comical as a result. But it can also get really boring as well. That's what I feel like with a lot of fight scenes. The fight scenes themselves I usually do like, but like the Deus Ex Machinas, it is done so much that it kinda ruins the impact. In the newest episode, Animosity, there are 3 fight scenes, and the first is about 3 minutes, the second is about 6, and the third is 12 minutes. Animosity is only 36 minutes, and just with the fight scenes, would make it 21 minutes. So almost 2/3 of the entire episodes is just fight scenes. That's not all my gripes with the fight scenes either. Let's compare a scene like this to a scene like this. If you were paying attention, firstly, thanks for getting this far, brother. And secondly, you can probably see both of these have a character getting hurt. And let's explain why these don't work well. Betty has survived way worse, and she's getting pissed from this. And in this scene, Sans has enough power to teleport, but he doesn't have enough power to just make some bones to make a wall to block. That's my biggest issue with the fight scenes, to be honest.
You know what? No, I'm leaving this point to you guys. I'm getting something to drink.
Oh, there's a bit to cover. So let's cover the Sans bit first. Yeah, Sans could have definitely teleported out of the area or made a bone shield, but that is casually ignoring that Sans was recently hit with a magic ball of fire by Jessica. And he was already recovering from being hit by it the first time around when the crane accident happened. Even if he somehow had some magic to use, what if he didn't have enough to make a bone shield? And honestly, by the looks of it, it was a last-second move made out of pure desperation to ensure that Azrael wasn't killed. A stupid move? Maybe so, but Sans was focused on making sure that Azrael didn't die. I wouldn't be surprised if Sans was purely acting on instinct in that moment and just did the first thing he could possibly think of in his situation.
As for Betty and the cinematic parallel, no duh she didn't die from that. She died after Gaster turned her into a torso, then a pincushion, then a pancake, then an overcooked steak, and then an overcooked dead. Extra crispy. The only times she survived anything that could compare, like with Undyne the Undying and Frisk's barrage of sword attacks, was because she had to retreat from the battle entirely and was able to regenerate from those fights after absorbing the substance hate. In the scenario with Gaster, she could not escape, thus leading to her death. Your comparisons are dunked on when you actually look at the context.
So how are your bibbles?
Honestly, I don't think we can compare to the length of yours.
Mine was barely even a scripture.
They're either too skewed to Betty being all the characters to a pulp, or Betty herself getting beaten to a pulp, which apparently turned out to be a really bad idea, so yeah, I hate this timeline.
Okay, there's a bit to cover here. First of all, not all the fights were as skewed as you say they are. The only fights that were skewed in Betty's favor were Alfie's, Frisk pre-level 19,
Wait, Bo, don't you mean Kara?
I hate you. Kara and the Dreamers versus Betty and Azrael, and Mettaton and the Restaurant Owners versus Betty. That's only 3 fights, and a quick battle after the Gaster one. And even that, all of them have their reasons. With Alfie's being a weaker monster, Frisk rushing to a battle even though he was told directly that he would lose in that state he was in. The Dreamers fight was one less so because of Betty and more so because of Azrael and the Dreamers' reluctance to fight him, and Mettaton being more of a distraction and Grilby and Muffet being there mostly as support. Otherwise, Gaster vs. Betty, the Switch fight, and the Dreamers vs. Betty were practically even, with Betty only winning Gaster in the end because of the Raptophobia kicking in, which Gaster didn't expect, and the Dreamers fight was won thanks to Betty taking advantage of Toriel's insecurities and fears. And when it comes to the fights where she was defeated easily, it's because the opponent had a clear advantage. Rather because 3 people against 1, or Frisk level 19, which need I remind you, nearly caused an entire genocide, and Undyne's immense determination, and she still fought smart against them. Rather it be using Raptophobia against Undyne and Sans, trying to attack Gaster from below after Sans died, or summoning Sans' soul against Frisk when she knew she didn't stand a chance in the state she was in at that point. Like, I get their subjectivity, and if you're not a fan of some of the fights, that's cool. My problem is how you're over-exaggerating the issues.
Bolt, this is the second bibble you made.
I'm not even religious. How did I do this twice?
This isn't a novel concept.
Hey, I'm the pun guy here, Zenny.
Remind me, who's the funny skeleton around here?
I walked right into that one.
Sounds like it hurt.
Not as much as Azzy reminding me this form was wiped away from existence.
What's a frisk? Can you eat a frisk?
It does not. It's still cute though!
The animation is pretty good. It just has some stuff that I have problems with. But what's a series without good characters? So let's move on to the most mixed part of the series for me. Even more than the story. And it's for weirder reasons you'd probably think. So it's tough to talk about this in the natural sense, so I'll talk about every big character and talk about who they are, what they do, and the problems and strengths of their character. So let's go. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. Frisk doesn't really have a personality per se.
Sandy, I don't know about you, but I think we might be having a bad time. But hey, let's calm down. Treeweed might have his reasons. Let's hear him out. It surely can't be that bad, right? Please tell me I'm right.
I don't think it's me, I have to say that too.
He's mainly just a blank slate for the audience to relate with. I'm not really mad at that, since in the Undertale game, Frisk was even less developed. But the main tipping point of his personality is My Promise. The episode, not My Promise. And it's when he has to switch places with Kara. Many people think that Frisk hurt people to up his LV and just straight up left when it was about to die. But honestly, from a logical and character standpoint, at this point in the story, Frisk can't save or loan. So if he dies, the whole world gets destroyed. And he was glitching, so he had to be replaced. But it was also after the events of the episode Love Part 2, where he learned to use the opposite of hate. Not love, but love. The story arc is already finished by the time of the next episode, so him dying didn't ruin some story that they were in the middle of either. So Frisk is a pretty good character. He isn't super interesting or funny, but he's not awful either.
Okay, I am just gonna run down. Sandy, please join me now.
Okay, where do I begin? First of all, Frisk doesn't have a personality? Moron, did you even see the show? Did you see his impulsivity? His struggle to deal with the unknown? How he went from being a kind boy trying to keep up a facade to someone who's willing to be honest with everyone no matter the consequences? Also, how is he supposed to be a blank slate people are supposed to relate to in this series? He was that in the games, but given his awareness of his own powers, his existential dread, and him kinda being a friggin' jerk when he decides to be honest? Yeah, Ayato from Asterisk War this guy ain't. And that's not even mentioning the poor structure. Ho ho ho, the poor structure.
Down, boy! You are not stealing the last cookie in the cookie jar. Anyway, all of that aside, everything Tree says here is thrown in kinda carelessly. You don't tie it into who Frisk is as a character, what their personality is or lack thereof. Instead, you're recalling events in the story just for the sake of it.
Has he stopped committing genocide on the kids' point yet, Sandy?
Well, hopefully.
Kara, before when he replaced Frisk, was a villain. And I think Kara was a lot better back then. After he replaced Frisk, they both had basically the same personality. But Kara was the original villain, the introduction of hate, and had a lot more to him. He wanted to take the determination of Frisk and the human souls to erase the timeline, and also, holy crap, he can be really scary. Like, look at this.
How is Kara the same as Frisk whenever Kara replaces him? Sure, they share the role of the main protagonist, but Kara is normally less aggressive in comparison to Frisk, as by how they discuss Asriel's condition, as well as Kara being normally more headstrong and determined
Oh, come on!
for in their actions. Honestly, I think this moment is best shown in animosity with their fight with a hate-filled Asriel, and particularly with their conversation with Flowey and Kara, despite being told about how the hate would not go away unless Asriel was killed, was still determined to save his brother by taking in the hate himself.
His main moment was Continue, the 5th episode of Season 1, when he and Asriel became best friends again. And it starts with Kara and Asriel realizing that they still have their heart lockets from way back when. And Asriel reminds Kara the good times they had. And with the help of the human souls, all the hate from Kara leaves, but so does his determination, which was the only thing keeping him alive. So Kara dies and gets trapped in the void. It's kinda a theme, apparently, to have a character end their story arc then die. So Kara is also a pretty good character.
There it is again with the mismatched talking points. This mention of Kara and Asriel becoming friends again doesn't correlate to Kara being a scary villain, or even with Kara having the same personality as Frisk. If anything, the episode shows that the hate Kara was filled with wasn't theirs in the first place. Frisk was the one who killed all the monsters during the genocide route, and Kara only fed off of the hate that the monsters harbored for Frisk. That Kara filled with hate isn't the real Kara, so it's hard to see what made you like them, especially when you don't go into further detail on who Kara is without that hate.
So let's look at Azrael is fine. He's pretty similar to Kara and Frisk, but Flowey is also a part of Azrael. And Flowey is a lot more interesting. In the game, Flowey was an experiment that went completely wrong. It was a soul that was put into a flower. And it kind of caused Azrael, who was in Flowey, to go crazy. And in Glitch Tale, Flowey was barely used. At least in Season 1, all he did was try to fight Kara and turn into Azrael, and that's basically it. But in Season 2, Flowey is still a part of Azrael, and he actually comes back sometimes, which causes the tipping point of Azrael's character. In Love, Part 2, where Azrael talks to Flowey, and Flowey basically tells him to stop feeling emotions. But Azrael says, oh no ho ho ho, why am I French now? But anyway, Azrael says that he knows he'll never forget what he did as Flowey. But with the love he has for his best friends will motivate him to stop the bad no-goods. Then he goes to fight the bad no-goods and dies. Whoops. Yet again, Azrael finishes story arc with Flowey and died.
Okay, I don't like this at all. First off, how is Azrael like Kara or Frisk? Especially since, unlike those two who are both willing to commit acts of violence, Frisk thanks to the previous genocide run at his level 19 state, and Kara in general, to be honest. Azrael is much more of a pacifist. Sure, he is willing to fight Bête Noire, especially after she killed Sans, but he's also certainly less violent in comparison to other characters, minus maybe Papyrus. There is also the fact that Azrael is the most driven by his emotions, as shown by how he goes after Fix because of his feelings towards helping him, when he's fighting his mother and father under the influence of hate, and the negative emotions he has towards their past, his fight with Kara and how he was lashing out about how Kara has screwed him over in the past, and by Kara's conversation with Flowey and how Flowey mentioned that the only thing that's even allowing Azrael to fight the hate from within is his feelings towards his family, and how they were the only thing he didn't want to lose. I also feel like you're wrong in saying that his whole arc ends with him dying to Betty, since he later on gets revived by her for using hate, and we get to see how, despite his usual positive attitude, he does harbor negative emotion towards others like Asgore, Torio, and especially Kara, given his past with them. I would argue that his arc gets wrapped up more around what Kara's arc does, in episode of Season 2 after they had fought and Kara talked to Flowey.
Who's making the holy Bible now?
Look, I have watched that fight scene over 100 times. I refuse to not acknowledge how amazing it is.
Now let's talk about Sans is a weird character in the series. In Season 1, he was one of the most important characters. But in just the second episode of Season 2, the Sandman dies. So he doesn't really have that tipping point of his character, where something changes in him, like with the talk with Azrael and Flowey, or when Frisk does the commit die. And when he came back to life, he was basically the same. So Sans isn't really a bad character necessarily, but he isn't as developed as other characters. Still, he's not terrible, so...
Yeah, I'm not liking this. And not because I'm currently the skeleton in question. Let's ignore how Sans sacrificing himself to save Azrael or fighting full force to protect his family, even though it would kill him, could be considered tipping points. Or how about all these nuances that were glossed over, such as Sans still remembering Frisk despite Kara taking their place, or how Papyrus's love for his brother cured him of hate when Betty revived him as her minion. My creme de la commit die for this is that nothing you've said pinpoints what made Sans important to the plot, or a good, no, not terrible character in your eyes. He was such an important character in the first season because he knew about the timeline being reset continuously and the damage that could cause, and insisted that Frisk not reset or else it would cause more glitches. As for what made you like or at least not dislike Sans, I have no idea. You spent nothing in this section to tell us what you think of Sans as a character.
Papyrus didn't really change heavily, and for once that's actually a good thing, because he's a good character. So let's talk about a bad character. This might be kind of controversial, but I think Toriel isn't a very good character. And let me explain why. Toriel herself is a good person. She's nice and caring, she's a teacher at school, and she can be pretty good at fighting. But the thing is, that's really the only real development she gets after she escapes the underground and becomes a teacher. And after that, she and Asgore fight Betty, which ends with Toriel hitting Asgore with a bad hurt. And that sucks. I literally remember after Season 1 ended. By the way, I think I became a fan around the 3rd episode of Season 1. But anyway, I remember thinking that Toriel barely appeared at all in the 1st season. So I wanted to see what happened in the 2nd season with her character. But throughout the 2nd season, Toriel still got barely anything. And it sucks, because Toriel is one of my favorite characters in the original Blundertale. And again, herself isn't a bad character, but she's just so barely used in such little development, it's enough to call it a bad character.
Hey, Azzy, time to defend your mom.
Wait, but why am I starting this?
Guess you sure the hell ain't my mother.
Can she be my mother? Wink wink, nudge nudge.
Fuck both of you. Anyway, Treewee, I have a simple question. How much did you pay attention to the series? Because I am starting to question that with this section on Torio. Yes, sure, Torio is a nice goat mom who is kind and caring, but she isn't just that. She is also consumed with the guilt of being unable to save the 6 human children that fell down the mountain in the past. This is especially seen by how Torio is always concerned with the safety of the humans, particularly the school children she takes care of during Bet Noir's attack, and how Betty herself took advantage of that guilt and used fear to make Torio attack Asgore, thinking that he was attacking Kara. A character that, may I remind you, she sees as a son. Honestly, this combined with how you're missing the nuances of characters like Kara, Asriel, and Sans makes me wonder if you are actually paying attention to the series, or if you just skimmed through it by accident.
Good job, Azzy. I guess we should go to the next point.
That pun was bad, and you should feel
I'm gonna bash my head into a wall now. You guys have fun.
You think you can watch Underverse after the bashing? Okay, thanks, bye!
It's not. It's still cute though!
So let's talk about the fish lady. Undyne is another character that I think is one of the best. There isn't exactly one point you can point as when her character really changed for better or for worse. The biggest moment is when my boy Alphys died, and Undyne was shaking and quaking in her boots. And the song that plays afterwards perfectly describes how terrible the situation is and Undyne's thought process.
Trembling within the breeze, I can feel my soul is shaking.
Before we cover literally everything you say, let's get the smaller complaints out of the way. Namely the fact that you didn't even need to play the full song. You could have either just played a small section of the song, or just have it as background music. And then there's the problem with the fact that the song itself is played in mono, and can only be heard through one ear, which is really annoying. And that's not even covering the pause before the songs, but at that point, I'd just be nitpicking. But let's move on to what you actually said.
But Undyne isn't just sad. She's also really, really pissed. So she fights Betty, and almost actually wins, but then Betty gets out there like a big puss. But another big moment for her is when she gets slapped by the big pink thing, and knows that she has to get up, because if she doesn't, everyone's hopes and dreams will get dunded. And she also goes Super Saiyan, so that's cool. So Undyne's character is also a really good one.
ooh, boy, oh buddy, oh pal, oh chum. What in the great bakery in the sky was that? There is an itty-bitty detail you don't seem to get right.
Alphys is a girl, you bagel.
Okay, in all seriousness, Alphys does play a part in what you mistook. That being, Undyne killed Alphys by accident. She was traumatized by how she failed to save her girlfriend, and doubted if she could make a decision like that again until she got a pep talk from Ronan.
And even if you're avoiding saying this because of spoilers, it doesn't work for practically the same reason your context didn't work. Namely the lack of important details and not spoiling stuff earlier on, while spoiling much more important stuff like Undyne going Super Saiyan. Heck, Undyne's trauma spoiled much less than mentioning the Kuma Losses fight, since the trauma was set up in episode 3, so not only are you missing a lot of details and important stuff about Undyne's character, but your only excuse for doing so is defeated by the fact that you aren't that good at avoiding spoilers.
Hey Azzy, how you doing?
Zenny, you're editing this, right?
Yeah?
Mind putting an Underverse spoiler warning on the screen for until 3, 2...
Why would I?
I have an announcement! Ex-Caster, the bitch-ass motherfucker! He went ahead and traumatized the boy-ass character! That's right, he went ahead and used his stabby thing and traumatized my boy! So they're gonna call post on my YouTube.com!
That happened.
I think I've been doing God's work too well.
Alpha Betty Spaghetti!
And by the way, Betty's gonna have her own section. And that section is this section. Betty is awesome. It's not really a cool backstory that's super interesting, but because she's scarier than my face. You know, while making the script, I've been rewatching the series over and over again to see things I hadn't before or get footage, blah blah blah. And I've seen so many moments where Betty is just seconds away from killing someone. And that's just a few of them. The worst of them is this.
So you rewatched the series before doing this review to catch up on anything that you missed, and you didn't paying attention to the nuances of characters like Toriel and Kara. I'm going back to Underverse.
Oh no, you don't.
But I want to experience suffering that I have inflicted to myself of my own free will.
You have sonic forces.
My laptop sucks! Or like at least my old one. I haven't tested the new one.
So, Betty is terrifying, but anything else? She doesn't really have a personality besides being scary and cunning, and will kill you if you don't give her what she wants.
You're not exactly wrong, but I wouldn't say that's all her personality entails. Since the start of Season 2, she's been shown to be manipulative, the first example being her cutesy facade to gain the trust of Frisk and their family. And she continued her manipulative behavior by instilling hate and fear into her enemies. Also, if I may play semantics, Betty would kill people because that is what she wants. She wants to kill all monsters and rule the rest of the world by instilling fear. So a lot of murder would happen, regardless if people gave her what she wanted.
I guess she doesn't really need too much personality because literally in the lore of the series, she doesn't really need a personality because she was made to kill the main character. But Betty also sometimes hinted at something worse that they should be worrying about. And when Sans dies fighting Betty in the episode Animosity, Gasser gets mildly annoyed and completely murders Betty. But it has also been hinted that Betty has a lot of hate, mate. So when Betty died, all the hate came out, and yeah, I think we're all gonna die now. Bakura says so be it, and says he'll show his animosity.
Wait, what?
Needs more butter.
I know we've gotten onto you for spoiling stuff when you said you wouldn't before, but this is probably the worst example, as you literally spoiled the final scene of the final episode out of writing this. Do you not see the contradiction here? But that's only the beginning, as there's very little tying this into your last statement. As Betty talking about something more, aka her referring to the soul harvest and the hate, has nothing to do with her personality and more to do with either her plans or in this case, the hate. It's power and intentions. I know you're young, so I don't want to be too harsh, but I'm honestly curious if you thought anything through when writing this.
So Betty is honestly not the most developed or has the craziest backstory, but honestly, Betty doesn't really have to. And with how terrifying she can be, I think it makes up for it. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop now. I have literally made 7 pages of this so far, almost 8, and I've talked about 4 main things so far, disregarding the small things I've talked about. So, what is my opinion on Glitch Tale? Overall, looking and watching out all the Glitch Tale episodes, I still like it. I know I've been really harsh on it, and I've complained about the story, animation, characters, fight scenes, tone, yada yada, but honestly there's still a lot to like about these episodes, and it really feels like Camila Cornball cares about making the series the best it can be. So yeah, I still like the series. Again, it has problems, but a lot of my favorite shows or movies have problems. It's just a part of life. It'll always have problems.
Ah, yes, those problems that were subjective issues at best or missed details in the story at worst. I'm not saying the passion project of Miss Cuevas can't be without flaws, or that you can't feel the way you have here about Glitch Tale, but if there are any that would be genuine issues, even those that are completely personal to you, you have yet to give any firm reasoning for them.
So, Glitch Tale is pretty good. Just like I said to myself last night, I'm glad you're not a complete disgusting failure. Kinda.
And thus the video ends. Not with a bang, but with mixed signals. I'm sure you didn't mean for that to be taken the wrong way, but a statement like, "I'm glad you're not a complete and total failure," has some really negative connotations to it, as if you were expecting Glitch Tale to be bad, or that there were a number of flaws that it has despite you liking Glitch Tale overall. It puts how much you like the series into question, and as part of a review, having a confusing conclusion like this one is not a note you'd usually want to end on.
So, do we have any final thoughts?
Look, I'll be honest, I don't have much. Everything I wanted to say, I said in the commentary itself, and I'm certain that both Zenny and both have way more to say than someone who recently got into Glitch Tale. So my advice is to pay a bit more attention to the story and characters, maybe take notes to keep track of everything if that helps, and also fix the editing issues that we had, like your footage being stuck in a box that gives me Black Border's Zatter flashbacks. Other than that, don't really have much to say. Have fun, boys. I'm going back to Underverse.
Okay, enjoy Exhale. I'm probably the person here with the most upfront love for the series, and I want to confirm that your opinions weren't the reasons we covered this. The reason I wanted to cover this was because it was the definition of confused, since it's hard to tell what the video is even trying to do. It's just like a mishmash of opinions that don't really mesh well with each other without proper structure. You didn't really look into the nuance of basically anything. You had trouble keeping a stance on things, as Zenny mentioned in his last point, and the comedy was utterly horrendous. I swear, if I heard one more Camilla insert last name here joke, I was going to throw a bowl of popcorn at Zenny.
Could you add more butter next time?
Sure thing. But anyways, my advice would be to look more into what you're reviewing to make sure you understand what you're talking about. Learn to structure your points better, and make sure you know your full stance before you review something. I think you have some potential as a reviewer, you just need to iron out the flaws you have. And now I'm going to see how Azzy's Underverse watch session is going. So Zenny, it's your turn.
At this point, I'm sure you are all well aware that Treeweed is a child, or at least in their teenage years. Point is, they're young and most likely made this video for fun. We came in expecting a review, and we came back with a lot to be desired, to say the least. There were spoilers where you said there wouldn't be, when you said you would talk about the character you mostly referred to scenes they were in. All of it felt misinformed or failed to properly inform the audience, not to mention the many little questionable editing choices, like the few moments where you simply let footage play out, or the many times we were reminded that you edited each segment rather than just the entire video. I won't rag on you too hard about all this, and hope you keep doing what makes you happy. We're just here to say if making reviews is your hobby, we hope what we brought to the table can help you improve. But I swear, whoever stole my slices of heaven from the freezer is going to get royally dunked on! Bull? What happened?
Don't ask, she needs to cry. This is normal when watching the Underverse.
What's an Underverse?
So we're Cavernian, right?
Yes, yes we are.
Guys, you're starting to scare me.
Don't worry, it's just 5 hours of pain, tops.
It's an enjoyable pain. The pain that leaves you wanting more. Like Infinity War.
I just wanted my Thin Mint!